with that, the whole point of stalling for time is to actually go into presenter view while you're stalling for time. Rookie mistake. All right, here we are. Haha. So welcome to getting started with the Elastic CI stack for EC2 Mac. My name is Nick Reichard. Yeah, it's Manish. We did that part while we were still looking at each other. So I'm going to hop right in to a brief Buildkite overview. I'll hand things over to Manish to run you through EC2 Mac, and then we'll come back here to see what the Elastic CI stack is all about. As for Buildkite,
no, go ahead, Nick.
No worries. As for Buildkite itself, if you don't know us, we're a platform for running fast, secure, and scalable continuous integration pipelines on your own infrastructure. We are more specifically a hybrid SaaS CI/CD solution. We try to combine the convenience of a hosted platform where we host the dashboard, the orchestration layer, essentially, where you'll be creating your pipelines and setting up users. But the builds and tests themselves will run on your infrastructure, whether that's on-prem or at a cloud vendor like AWS. It brings you the security and flexibility of building behind your firewall, where you're able to test your code without having to have it leave your data center. And when it comes time to run those tests, you'll be testing them on as close to production as possible. Something that's very important if you're, say, building for macOS and iOS. And to that point, we're excited that it's a little bit of a new solution for everybody to talk about Amazon's new EC2 Mac solution.
Thanks, Nick. Hey, everyone. So just a bit of background on Amazon EC2 Mac instances. When around 3 years back, we started looking at the space, and the story is quite interesting, where we had an internal team within Amazon, not as a part of AWS, but overall as Amazon, like responsible for building applications for all the Amazon-owned entities, like think about like Amazon Retail app or Kindle or Alexa or Goodreads. And the way they actually approached us is basically they were trying to implement EC2 kind of APIs for their own internal build fleet or Mac build fleet that they kept in quite a few places. There was a lab here in Seattle. There was a lab here in the Bay Area. Think of them as Mac minis, like sitting in on like different racks and connected via network. And when we tried to dig into like, why are they trying to implement EC2 kind of APIs? They told us like, hey, customers love the EC2 experience of being able to like spin up and spin down VMs with APIs. We launched in 2006 with support for Linux. In 2008, we added support for Windows. And for since the last 15 years or so, we kept on adding like support for multiple operating systems. What was missing was macOS. And as you know, macOS could only run on branded Apple hardware that that EC2 could not support. So they were trying to implement the same thing. So that got us thinking. That was like, hey, these customers are hitting this issue. We are quite sure that they are not the outliers. It's something that should be relevant to all Apple developers. And when we started talking to our other customers, we realized it's the same problem that they have been hitting, because we couldn't support Mac hardware as an EC2 instance. We couldn't support macOS on AWS. So that was around the time when Apple actually launched the refreshed Mac Mini with much beefier CPU and memory specs and much better network connectivity. I believe it was it is 4 Thunderbolt ports that way they launched with. So that was around the time when our leadership started talking to Apple leadership around the fact that, hey, Apple developers need to go and get those Macs. They need to find a space to put it. Like Macs are awesome as physical devices, but when you're trying to run them in a lights out data center environment, it's not fun. Like we have had stories of like customer where there was a power failure, the power came back up and somebody needed to take a flight to the data center where they were keeping the Macs to be able to power them on, because there was no out-of-band management and everybody was working home for COVID. Or there was another customer who was had to go to the lab in the middle of the night because the cooling went off and the temperatures internally in that room soared. So they had to open the window, wait for security to arrive before they could go home and like somebody to come and fix the cooling or the air conditioning in that room. So like all those anecdotes told us that it's something that is a continuous pain point. It's something that our counterparts at Apple were also eager to solve. And overall, around 2017, EC2 re-architected its entire virtualization stack. We called it the AWS microsystem. What it enabled us to do, apart from the other things, is basically we could take a third-party server or like a Mac Mini for that instance, and without making any modifications to that server, we could literally integrate it with the AWS microsystem, rack it and stack it and make it available to the customers as just like any other EC2 instance. So easier said than done, but the capability existed and we continued evolving that capability while we continued working on EC2 Mac. And then fast forward last year, we launched EC2 Mac to basically solve the use case or the pain points that our customers had trying to manage Mac infrastructure. And at the same time, when we enabled it as any other EC2 instance with support for elastic block storage or virtual private cloud and whatnot, the idea was that by keeping the experience same and integrating with all these other AWS services, like iOS developers can start modernizing their iOS build pipeline, like be able to leverage all the other services, not have to worry about where to manage secrets or how to configure network security. And also at the same time, like allow partners like Buildkite to be able to build like scalable and elastic solutions on top of that, which just makes life so much easier as an iOS developer, because you would rather be focused on building great apps and like adding features which bring customer value and not stop worrying about how to manage your infrastructure, offload as much as you can to us. We kind of have a long history and experience of taking that undifferentiated heavy lifting out of the hands of our customers. Back to you, Nick.
Yeah, no, it's funny too, like, because I have been in the game long enough that I remember when all servers were an issue for procurement, and I should have a new 1U in about 3 weeks, or whatever the case is, and just like being able to offload even just the asset management, but let alone being able to use, like you say, like virtual networking and block storage and the like, and all of those quality of life things we've gotten used to out in the cloud. And when it comes to running your pipelines, we have a brand new thing. There's my screen share button. This time, the whole desktop, because I'll have a couple things to share with you. But we're going to talk a little bit about the Elastic CI stack for EC2 Mac. Now, if you're joining us live today and you caught our 3 o'clock Pacific session, we talked about the Elastic CI stack for AWS that was in that demo using Graviton. This is different from that stack. So it is worth noting that the Elastic CI stack for EC2 Mac is distinct from the Elastic CI stack for AWS. And a big part of that is that there are a number of considerations that you have to make when doing EC2 Mac, that it's different enough to warrant its own cloud formation. Since it's early stage, there's limited region availability, and the big one, of course, being the 24-hour minimum allocation period through Apple's licensing. So it means that we're going to have to think a little bit differently about our auto scaling strategy. I think in my last demo, I had a 600-second idle timeout. That's definitely not the scale that we're going to be working on here. But that's not to say that we can't get significant cost savings from migrating those workloads into a service like EC2. The other thing that's worth noting is this is sort of our V1. There are a few more prerequisites. So you do need to bring your own VPC and an AMI, an image of an Apple image or Mac OS image, rather. And what we'll provide in the CloudFormation is it will create a host resource group and auto scaling group, as well as take care of all of the agent installation via launch template. We also provide some help. So because we are have a few more prerequisites for this one, we wanted to make sure that we were providing guidance, both via things like the AWS VPC Quick Start Guide, as well as what are the considerations with public VPCs, private VPCs, and the like when you're setting these things up. The biggest thing we want to make sure is that as you are using this, you're keeping things scoped where you want it to be. So with that in mind, I had the question I asked a few of my colleagues was, all right, what will we show in a demo? Because I just spun up 10 Graviton, and I'm not going to go spin up 10 EC2 Mac instances. That's kind of an expensive demo to run. So spoilers. We had a look at it. It's like, well, showing that it works is an API call, right? I don't imagine I have to convince you that if I make a call out to my AWS CLI, I'm going to be able to launch an EC2 instance. So we like playing with what are the things we can do inside of Buildkite. We love putting screenshots and GIFs and things in our builds. So what they did is they went and popped open the iPhone simulator, went and navigated over to the UnblockConf website and took a screen capture for the nothing up my sleeves. Here we are. So indeed, this is running inside one of the Mac minis, and kind of hopping back into my browser here. We could actually take a look at sort of that run inside of Buildkite here. So kind of just as with any other setup, we can go through the history of what happened here. We can take a look at the artifacts that were captured, of course, the screenshot that we took, and we can take a look at the details of how things were run. So the same way that I targeted specific instances via queues, Keith Duncan, by the way, shout out, the author of this lovely demo, set up a Mac queue for the EC2 instance here. We can see all of the details from our AWS host name, what OS it's running, the agent version, etc., and the successful completion. We can also see that that agent is still available to us. So if we needed to queue up another command, we have that ready to rock. And another thing sort of worth noting here, we have a bunch of information not only about VPC design, but if you need some assistance figuring out how to get an AMI built for this, we provide sort of the minimum viable route to getting your own Mac OS image so you can get hands on. And then once all is said and done, you've got a CloudFormation template. We'll have some places for you to slot in the image and networking information from your AMI and VPC respectively. We have a default min size of 0, max size of 3 set up in there. And if we take a look at the template itself, I will go ahead and kind of see, again, we have pretty straightforward as far as what parameters are configurable here. But it is worth noting that among the things it sets up is an auto scaling group. So there isn't we're not watching the queue like we were in our Linux agents. We probably want to have a little bit more control over when we spin things up and down. One of the sort of best defaults that I heard proposed was if you have something like a schedule-based view for the predictable workloads you might have. A given example might be, I want to make sure that I have agents available on Monday and they're spun down on Friday, so I'm not paying for them over the weekend, with some burst capacity if I have some unexpected load in there. So that you kind of can take a more direct approach to those predictable workloads, but also have that sort of automated buffer where it's like, yeah, if I'm pegging CPU or anything else, I can still go ahead and scale things out to get that burst capacity I need. But I avoid the case of I got 2 jobs running in parallel, and by the time I spin up my EC2 instance, the job's done and I'm stuck with it for a day. So we wanted to make sure that we take a little bit more care in sort of what those triggers are for scaling in that world. But with that, I wanted to open up the floor. We definitely had, during our keynote presentations, we had Oliver Koo from Pinterest give a talk about their EC2 Mac setup. We'll have even more EC2 Mac later on today with Flare Build and Lodal. But if folks have questions, I want to once again direct you to the Q&A, and we'll be happy to answer them for you. So, Manish, how have you found folks' response to the new Mac Metal instances? I've definitely seen a lot of excitement in my own Twitterverse.
Yeah, and to be honest, it did take us took us by quite a surprise, right? Like when we actually launched, and just the interest and the adoption, like we knew we are onto something, but we didn't. We had some pulse of the customer adoption, like and how much the customers are gonna love it. Like what really excites me the most is like, yes, enterprises love EC2 Mac because they already are building on the, AWS. Have made a lot of investment. They are integrated with their all the other services, so it does like make sense to basically not to have a fragmented pipeline, but for like iOS builds and keep them actually like integrated and all into like a consolidated build pipeline. What has been pleasantly surprising is how many like net new AWS customers like using AWS for the first time, or like really small game developers, or like startups like resorting to basically like talking to them. We walk them through like the constructs of EC2, AWS, and how they can spin up, and they are running their production builds on EC2 Mac, even though they might be a handful of EC2 Macs. Just the benefit of like not having to worry about if Mac goes down, in the office goes down, and nobody's out there to power it up. I think it's a great story. And every time I talk to one of these customers, it's always a delight, because a lot of pain, like I oversimplified earlier when I said, hey, it was AWS Nitro system, we plugged it and played it. We were literally taking a physical machine that always assumes there's a person sitting next to it to be able to press buttons, do all those other things, and put it in an AWS environment where everything is automated. Like right from like launching, terminating instances, rebooting, scaling up, scaling down. So it did take a quite lot of effort, but the fact that customers find value in it, customers find useful, not just some of our largest customers, but really small upcoming iOS developers like building that next great app or the next great game. That's what excites me the most, and that's what has been like the hallmark of the adoption over the last 1 year.
Right on. It's weird too, like I'm dating myself with this, but like one of my first tech jobs was in a data center that did a lot of Mac hosting, and we'd have like a bunch of G3s and G4s just sitting in the data center where it's like, oh, I gotta waste 4U of space to put this, home desktop PC going in here. Gets me kind of nostalgic. But that's a bit of it too, where like I think like I tell you, the novelty has not worn off for me being able to just go run like a CLI command and have a Mac Mini. Whereas like one of the first tech demos I ever did was like going and like launching my solution on a Windows instance out in AWS. And at the end of the demo, the person I was talking to was like, "You launched a Windows instance in 5 minutes?" I'm like, "Oh, that wasn't me, but like, okay, yeah, that's let me tell you about the cloud." So gets me excited. Yeah. Let's see. It looks like we have. Oh, yeah. Some question coming in. So does AWS support ARM Mac Minis, the Apple Silicon?
Oh, yeah, I can take that one. So it's something that we are actively working on, and we don't support it as of today, but it's our highest roadmap priority, and we are really close. So expect them to be available pretty soon. And if I would also add that if there's an interest in qualifying them or reaching out to AWS for like an early access before we launch it, just reach out to me directly. I'll share my email address, or if you already have an AWS account team, work through them. We would definitely like to provide you early access so that your qualification is unblocked. At the same time, we can get early feedback from you.
Right on. It's nice to have a friend in high places. So that was interesting too. So we had a comment come in, sort of like the biggest blocker to sort of selling it internally has been sort of kind of sunk cost on existing on-prem, and so trying to articulate the benefits of the non-monetary benefits has been a challenge. Interesting.
Yeah, you're referring to the third question, right, Lauren? Right?
Yeah. And I think, like, it's a solid point. I think it's one of those things where, like, sooner or later it becomes a pressing issue. Like, do I go buy a bunch of M1 Macs, or do I go, launch these, shiny new instances that like just came free on Amazon? There's definitely, and I think like that's the other thing too, that like there are folks with existing sort of AWS know-how who are now able to play with Macs for the first time in that playground. And then there are folks that have been doing more Mac development either on-prem or in a boutique service that are now also learning a new way of doing things. Have you found that like there have been any sort of good resources for folks that are using AWS for the first time to try to get their hands on EC2 Mac?
In terms of, Nick, you mean the pricing, or just the
more just, I guess,
onboarding?
like what would, I guess, be like where someone would go if like they're like, kind of getting started guide level stuff? What are kind of the key concepts that like folks that are new to the cloud side of it come in? Like there's certainly like, the VPC guide is, I think, a great one, but any other sort of like early adopter gotchas that might hit a new crop of folk?
I think there are two ways I would like to answer this question. One is we like, if you go to AWS documentation and search for EC2 Mac, we have kept our documentation like separate, and in a sense it's really very condensed. Like I think the Linux guide actually goes and runs into like hundreds of pages. EC2 Mac you can literally print, I think, on 5-6 lines, because it's something that as the product manager here in EC2, like not just for EC2 Mac, but for the entirety of EC2, we actively think and try to make cognizant of that as and when EC2 is expanding to like serve millions of customers, some of them running cloud for like 10, 11 years, and ask for features, and we build new features that deliver value to them. We have to be careful about keeping the beginner experience like really seamless. Like you don't want to be getting lost into like, hundreds of pages of documentation to try to understand whether these APIs are relevant for you or not when spinning up an instance. Second one is specifically for EC2 Mac, we have an online GitHub repo. I'll just pull that up and search it, send it across. But that has a lot of level 100 blogs or demos, just like, hey, what is an EC2 instance and what is an EC2 Mac instance, which really goes down to like the core level 100 fundamentals for somebody who's just starting on, can just follow those tutorials one by one and spin up an EC2 Mac instance and be able to SSH into it for terminal access, be able to connect via VNC for graphical access. Because after that, then the AWS hump actually goes away, and it literally feels like the Mac environment or macOS environment that these customers tend to be like intimately familiar with.
Right on. I did at least find the docs page, and yeah, that's a great smattering of sort of, everything from where to find your Emmys to how to connect to instances. Sweet. Let's see. Have we got anything? Ooh, I see something new. All right, we have another question from the audience. Have we seen anyone using virtualization technology like Anka on top of the EC2 Macs to achieve the quote repeatable ephemeral build environments? Or alternatively, are you seeing customers roll their own teardown cleanup scripts on the persistent machines?
The short answer on that one is we have seen both. Like I would say predominantly, like customers tend to just spin up bare metal macOS VMs, because like even if we take a step back, historically, we saw a lot of customers run virtualization layer on top of their Mac and spin up ephemeral VMs on top of that virtualization layer. In the use case of Mac, not so much specifically about like carving out a Mac, and even like Mac Mini tends to be like, it's not comparable to like enterprise level servers with like 48 cores, 96 logical processors, 512 gigs of RAM, right? Historically, like a lot of customers used to do that to be able to like build their own orchestration layer, which is like you want to be able to programmatically spin up and spin down those ephemeral VMs, but macOS doesn't provide that capability directly. So let's run a virtualization layer and spin up and spin down VMs. But then there was a trade-off between orchestration convenience and automation on one side and performance on the other side. Like to give you an example, the internal team that kind of within Amazon that runs owns all the builds for all the Amazon owned apps. They actually migrated to 100% of their builds to EC2 Mac, and the build times went up by like around 40%. And that was just because on the fleet that they had in Seattle, they were running a bare metal virtualization layer. On top of that, they were running macOS, but there was always that virtualization overhead that they had to incur. So their estimate was that Amazon ended up saving like around 13 SD years by just approximating how fast the builds were. Today, we still see like there are still customers who run, say for example, Anka or V2. It's essentially driven by like multiple cases, like being able to run smaller VMs or more ephemeral VMs. Anka is, or like V2 is one of our strong partners, and they have been working on their own virtualization solution tailored for EC2 Mac environments. We know of customers who use it today, and they are perfectly happy with how the performance of the output has been based on the use case that they were targeting earlier.
Right on. Okay. Last call for questions from folks. And if you're joining us live, let's see here. Ooh, let me get my handy dandy schedule up. What am I doing next? I think I'm doing test analytics next. Am I doing test analytics? Yes, I am. All right. So at 5 o'clock Pacific time, we'll be doing a test analytics deep dive. I'll join myself and our own Grant Colgate. And we'll have a couple more webinars after that, Buildkite 101. And then we'll be talking some EC2 Mac some more later today at 7 o'clock Pacific, when we have our auto-scaling Bazel RBE and EC2 Mac with Buildkite Flare and nodeless Kubernetes. Say that 5 times fast. But let's see here. Oh, we have a question. Someone asks whether there's any data on how people have been handling burst ramping given the 24-hour held instance constraint. Have there been folks that have had any success optimizing their strategy there?
The short answer there is it depends.
Yeah.
Like in the sense that a lot of times, like I would caveat that between expected bursts versus unexpected bursts.
Mm-hmm.
Like an expected burst is essentially like, hey, you have a team of 50 developers. We generally see them checking in their code and doing incremental builds or the fresh builds like throughout the day, but we usually see a spike towards like late afternoon when they are basically wrapping up their final build. They want to see the builds, make sure that the tests run before they actually go home. So in that case, in those scenarios, like those bursts can be handled well or like easily, which is at some level there is always that trade-off between do I want to lower the SLA for my end developers by spinning up more Mac hosts and being able to turn around those Mac faster versus just queuing them up on a limited number or like a lower number of hosts, which actually lowers the cost, but it might also increase the SLA for that other developer who's basically waiting for their build to complete and the test to run. So it kind of depends. And we have, like those bursts are easier to manage based on what the preference is. Like at the same time, you're spinning up another host, but at the same time, developer productivity kind of gets impaired because now you're just waiting for your build to complete before they can do something more productive or like can't iterate faster. So it kind of depends. But you're absolutely right, Peter, which is unexpected bursts kind of become challenging because at that time you need to make a real-time decision on whether I need to spin up new hosts to be able to add them to my worker fleet and be able to complete those builds faster versus let me just wait and queue them up. And I'm perfectly okay with that. These tend to be challenging, but just in terms of like the build and test workloads that we are targeting with EC2 Mac, generally they tend to have like a strong recurring pattern, except for say, for example, where like there's a new release coming up or there's a gaming customer who's launching like a big game and everybody is like frantically trying to push in their code. At those times, yes, unexpected bursts do happen, but again, it depends on once the customer decides whether it's optimizing for costs and utilization versus trying to minimize the SLA for the developer. Once that decision is made, then the execution kind of becomes easy, if that makes sense.
It's all relative. Ultimately, I imagine like we're a week and a half away from Cyber Monday, and I imagine that's a distinction that'll be particularly well felt by anyone with an e-commerce platform.
Yep, and just to add to that, which is we continue working closely with Apple on making EC2 Mac instances more cloudy and more elastic. We don't have anything concrete to share here, but it's definitely a goal that both us as well as like Apple share on making the lives of developers easier. So the more feedback we receive from you around the challenges of dealing with 24 hours and so on, the more we can actually pass on, so that eventually, like our North Star or the goal is that the EC2 Mac instances should be just like any other Linux or Windows instances that you spin up. Like apart from like the underlying server or so on, you don't need to worry about anything else. It's the same APIs, it's the same tenancy or the purchasing construct that work. We have come a long way, but it's just the beginning. And we expect that over a period of time, we are just going to make the lives of our Apple developers and our customers easier and easier.
Right on. No, thank you. Some kindness in the Q&A. And I guess one last thing for you. What should EC2 Mac fans look forward to at reInvent?
It's a good question. I think it's like, without sharing too many details, because many decisions and many things keep being in flux. We sometimes plan something for reInvent and not. We think we have great workshops planned. We have quite a few more customers coming and sharing their EC2 Mac adoption journey. And we do have a few things planned that we would definitely want to get out by reInvent, touch wood. But as of now, all I can say is it's going to be an exciting reInvent for EC2 Mac customers.
Right on. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a ton of fun. I knew we would have some active Q&A for these fun newfangled EC2 Mac instances. And thank you, attendees, for joining us. We'll see you at the top of the hour when we will be talking test analytics.